I think it's really important to keep in mind what constitutes a constructive dismissal, right? So this is something that is a unilateral and substantial change to a fundamental term or condition of employment. So of course, when we look at that first criteria, unilateral, the best course of action, the safest course of action is always to get buy-in from your employees. So if an employee is agreeing to the changes, you're avoiding the risk of constructive dismissal entirely because the change is no longer unilateral. One of the first questions that you probably want to ask is, what do your agreements or policies say with respect to your ability to make changes to your benefits plan? So in other words, have your staff already agreed that there's going to be a certain amount of flexibility with respect to what their benefits package looks like? If not, and if you want to ensure that employee morale is maintained, that's when you might want to make sure that any changes that you are implementing are beneficial and helpful for employees, given the changes to the work environment. And seeking employee input can be key to that. So speaking with your employees, figuring out what it is that they're looking for, what they want to see in their benefits package, can be a really great way to avoid this risk of constructive dismissal. The other question, of course, is, are these changes substantial? Are you replacing one benefit with another with relatively equal value, or are you revamping your entire benefit plan in a way that's going to result in a significant loss to your staff? If you find yourself in a situation where the answer is yes, and you do need to make a unilateral change, then you may be able to still insulate yourself against liability by providing advance notice that the changes are coming into effect. Now, what's important to understand about this is that essentially what you are doing is you're providing notice that the old terms of the relationship are coming to an end. So it's very similar to as if you were giving somebody notice of termination, because that's kind of what you were doing. You were saying the old relationship will not exist anymore. Here are the terms of the new relationship. Now, what that means practically is that the amount of notice that's going to be needed is potentially going to be different for every single employee, but also could be very significant, right? We know that notice periods can go up to 24 months as kind of an informal cap. So that can be a really long period of time to be worried about whether there's a potential constructive dismissal claim, and to wait to implement these changes when you may need to make them now. So I think, employee buy-in, if you can get an agreement from an employee that, yes, we're comfortable with this, everybody's on board with these changes, that's going to be the safest option, with kind of your fallback being, how can we make sure this isn't going to qualify as a substantial change?
We have historically grown through acquisition, and all the points that you raised are absolutely correct. And we call our acquisitions babies, and we had a COVID baby. So we did an acquisition during COVID and had to think about how to harmonize the benefits into our existing benefits. And rather than, as you said, make that unilateral change, we looked at usage, we looked at both plans to see what was the best of both worlds. We asked employees what was most important, and we came out with a plan that we thought would work for all of our employees, and they all agreed. So it is important to do that front end work to save the back end headache.
Absolutely right, Crystal. And I think it sounds like you had the exact right approach. And I think, aside from the legal consideration of constructive dismissal, you also want to be thinking about employee morale, right? If we're going to be substantially revising a benefits package, even if you don't get a demand letter alleging constructive dismissal, you could have a lot of really unhappy employees. And, going back to the whole issue of retention of staff, particularly in the pandemic, that's not something that you want to be looking at, because you're going to start to lose good people.